All right, it's time for the assault air hammer. And I think I need the big anvil. Where's my big boy at? We're about to extract some bearing races from a rear end on this 05 F-150. I've got a set of pinion bearings that showed up. This is the second video on this particular F-150. It came in with a nasty, howling, grinding rear end sound in it. After a little bit of disassembly, we found some pitting on the outboard pinion bearing. This is the pinion gear that runs on the ring gear in our rear axle housing over yonder. And this pinion it appeared to be over tightened a little bit. And we've also got, like I said, this nasty pitting going on these bearing surfaces in here. During disassembly in the last video, this is part 2 video, during disassembly in the last video, we took the differential carrier out of it and attempted to just rotate the pinion in the housing and found that it was binding and didn't want to turn, and it just felt really, really, really rough. After, like I said, further disassembly, we found a bit of bearing damage, and I speculate that somehow, some way, the tolerance between these two bearings, the outboard and the inboard, was a little too tight, and there was too much pressure on these bearings, causing excessive friction. So what we're gonna do is take this new bearing set right here. We're gonna pull this bearing off with the press the new one on. We're gonna go in there with this assault air hammer. We're gonna knock out those bearing races, drive new races in, which also came in the kit. Then we're gonna reinstall this pinion. Then we're gonna reinstall that carrier. Then we're gonna reinstall these axles. Then we're gonna reinstall these brakes. And then we're gonna go out and test drive this truck one more time to make sure that the rear end noise shuts up and goes away. So, stay tuned, because this is going to be a very good part 2 rear axle reassembly video. All right, so now we know what we're doing, why we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it. Let us start doing it. First things first, let's load the assault hammer, get that thing nice and set up. Let's get the airline on it, and we're going to come in here, and first thing I'm going to do is knock out this front race right there. That's that front pinion race. See it way back in the back? We're gonna knock that out first, and then we're gonna go around to the other side, the front side of this axle, and then knock the rear race out in this direction. Then we can hammer the new ones back into place. Should go quite smooth and swimmingly here. We just got that guy set up. Air is set up. We're ready to rock and roll. Loud noises. Let's knock this unit out. A little bit at the top. That way it comes out evenly. Got it. Okay, that's one race removed. Come around here to this front side, and I'm gonna do the same thing and drive that rear race outward or inward. Hit it at the top a little bit here. She's moving. Woohoo! Got it. Alrighty, now the next task is going to be removing this pressed on bearing from this pinion gear. And I will utilize a bearing extracting device here. We're going to clamp this on to the bottom of this bearing, put it in the hydraulic vise, and then use the vise to press the pinion off of the bearing. So this thing will remain stationary in the press, and then hydraulic press presses down on this, pulls the bearing off of the shaft. I think I said vise in there. I meant to say press or bearing. I don't know why I said vise. Probably because I'm vicing this thing, and the brain does strange types of word association. Or my brain does anyway, and I'm trying to speak and do something at the same time. You get those words conflated and mismatched. And that's stuck. Turn. There we go. Okay, that guy's tight. Let's tighten up this other side. That's also pretty tight, like a tiger. It's tight, nice and tight like. All right, so now that we have the bearing puller attached under the bearing on the pinion, we will set this whole system up here in the press. We got a hydraulic press. It's basically just a big bottle jack that runs off of this beam right here against this beam here, and we can use that right there to press on certain metallic objects. So we need to take this guy here, get it set up, and using extreme caution around these gears as well. We can't be banging these gears on the steel there, and we certainly have to make sure we don't chip these gears. If I chip these, we ruin the pinion gear, and that would be bad. Here I've altered the setup with some C-channel steel and these steel spacers right here, so that should give me the space that I need to fit this gear. You just kind of have to maneuver everything properly so we have good support, as well as having enough space for the gear to press out. So I think that's about right. I'll keep an eye on it and we'll make sure. Let's get it centered with the jack. It's gonna go about right there. So now we've got all this space right here between the bottom of the beam and the top of our pinion. So what I need to do is raise this whole table up slightly. What I'll do, down here to the left, it's got a pin. Pull that pin up, repin it to the next hole, and then do the same thing here on the other side. Pull that guy up. There we go. Much more closer. See that right there? There's barely any space. I'm slightly concerned about that because I don't want to damage the threads, and I certainly don't want to press on the threads. So I'm going to put the nut on here and press off of the nut. That's probably the safest way to go about it. So let's see. Pull this guy back out some. Get the nut on it. I'll run that nut down. That way we're pressing on the nut and not the threads, even though the threads are ultimately pressing on the nut. It's a better surface to utilize. There we go. Get that thing nice and centered. Even looking like. Very good. All right, so now we can begin the pressing procedure here. We'll close the valve. We have contact. Watch right here. The bearing stays. The shaft presses out. Okay, we're starting to bottom out down here, so let's reset some and make sure our clearances are good at the gear teeth. We do not want to press the teeth into these little steel shims and whatnot. See that right there, how we're getting real close to it? We don't want to press against that. That'll break the teeth. We'll just move it out slightly. Move that one out a little bit. That's good. Okay, still looking good. Continuing the press. I'm getting close. And how's that side? I got room for days on this side. Okay. All right, you guys are around on the back. Continuing the press, but I'm reaching up inside of here to hold on to this gear so when it pops out and releases from the bearing, it doesn't just fall and drop and then nick itself steel here. Does that make sense? Good. Everything's still free and clear. This is good. Woohoo! Release. We have achieved release. There we go. We got her. So now, come back around and pull this whole conglomeration out of the hole here. Then we can disassemble. There, like that. Beautiful. All right, a couple minutes later, I've cleaned up all the nasty off this pinion, and we would like to get our new bearing in place. Now, all things being equal, and we just simply replaced the bearing, I'm gonna leave the original shim in position right there. So if I have to, we'll take it back out and re-shim it. I do have a set of shims, but we're gonna try it with the shim that we know goes with it, and we'll work with that one. This shim right here is what is ultimately responsible for the pinion depth. That's how far this pinion sticks into the differential, so it can properly mesh and meet with the gears on the ring gear on the carrier over there. So what we'll do is we're actually going to press from this side now. So we're not going to be holding the pinion stationary. We're going to be holding the bearing stationary and then pressing on the pinion. So what I've got here is the bearing in place, and I've got a race from another bearing because that meets perfectly with the inner race on this bearing. So we'll take this whole bit of business here and we're going to set it up in these little adapter flat businesses right here, leaving just enough clearance for the assembly to pass through. See how that's working out? So we'll take this guy, invert it, drop it down in the hole, and then we can press against the actual pinion itself. There we go. Nice to set up straight like. Good. Okay, so I've got a socket in there to take up some of the space. I'll run this guy down until we make contact and begin the press. I just had to pause and make sure that bearing was pointed the right way. I've done that where I've pressed bearings on in the wrong direction. It's ridiculous, but it happens. It's not really going in straight. Let me rotate it around and we'll try to press it from another angle. It's probably just a little cattywampus or whatever and doesn't want to go in straight. So we'll press it in at an angle until it starts to go. Once it gets in a little bit, it'll line up properly. Let's try this. Oh, there she goes. She's straightening out just fine. Look at that. Going right in. We're gonna press this down. It's going very smoothly now that it's going straight. We're gonna press this all the way until it bottoms out. Tension's coming up. Flashlight's going down. It died. It's going in nice and easy. All right, we're bottomed out, I think. Feeling some pressure on the jack, and we take a look. See, we're nice and bottomed out against the pinion. Say we're all set here. Releasing pressure. And we have one inner pinion bearing pressed into position. Beautiful. So now we must take the race, get that piece of dirt out of there, and then get this race hammered into the housing. Same thing with the front side race. And then we can get the pinion, crush washer, shims, and the new nut installed on this pinion. So now we need to get this race installed in the axle, okay? That's kind of a tall order because it's far away and hard to do. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the old race, see that right there? We're gonna hold the old race up to it, And I'm going to use this bearing driver to kind of tap it in a little bit. And if it doesn't go smoothly, which it probably won't because it didn't come out smoothly, we're going to have to put an installer on it and pull it in from the other side. Right now we're kind of getting in the hole here. All right, that's about as far in as I think it's going to go without having to force the thing in with a hammer, which we can't do because we'll chew up the race if we try it. So we need to go ahead and pull this in from the other side. I'm actually going to use a hub bearing installer to attempt to do this. Reason being is my hammer in driver, I don't have one that actually fits that size, so I'm trying a different little method here. We take this puller rod and its nut and the spacer for the front side of the housing there to pull against. So watch how I'm going to do this. We're going to take, let's see how I want to set this up here. Okay, that's going to work. We'll put that through the bearing like so. So now we got something to pull against, right? Then we can come around here to the other side, set this guy up on the gravity. Set that guy up in the front and then pull it through with the nut. So as we tighten down this rod, it's going to draw that race into the housing there. Let's get some a little bit of light on the subject here, best I can, I guess. Okay, so now got that guy kind of set up. Let's get the nut over the shaft like so. And what I'm going to do, I'm reaching around the back of the diff over here. I'm pushing the bearing into that race along with the tool. Tighten this guy down some, and we're going to pull, like I said, we're going to use this to pull the race into the housing. Get that a little tighter. Coming in 32mm socket. It's a 90-degree Milwaukee impact. It's kind of weak for this application, which is good. We just need to get some pressure kind of built up here. Send it. Unsend it. It's out of alignment. Line it up again. All right. I think it's in. It's going. It's a little off center. Let me back this off some and recenter. There we go. Woo! Socket's getting hot. All right, she's in, I believe. Okay, so I switched out the little weak gun with the bigger gun since we know that that's all aligned properly. The old race is pressing on the new race, and we've got the puller shaft in position. So let's send it home one last time to make sure it's fully seated. It's about as good as it's gonna get, I think. So now I'm gonna come in here with this punch and just give it a couple of love taps. Right there, 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 there. So now, reach around to the gun again. We're gonna back this out. Gravity, didn't mean to do that. And that is one inner race installed. Sounds good. Let's wipe off some of that debris. There we go. Looking good in the neighborhood. All right, so that's our inner race. Now we need to get the outer race installed as well. Okie dokes. So we're back around to the front side of said pinion. There is our new race. That's the old race, you can tell, because even though I wiped it down, it's got some crusties on it. So what we'll do, let's set that guy in there like so. There we go. And then I'll start it off with the old race right here. Watch this. Just gonna kind of tap it on in. I might be able to send it all the way with this old race. As long as it doesn't misalign, should be just fine here. Or if I don't smash my fingies. That would be bad. Okay. I need to move my light and get better swing here. Bear with me, folks. We're doing hard work. Woo! Caught it. And then dropped it. Butterfingers. It's not in yet. Did you hear the tinky tinks? It's bottomed out. Beautiful. Okay, so both races are installed in position. Let's give this a good little wipe down in here. Again, good to go. Okay, let's get ourselves backed up out of here a little bit and then back over to our pinion. So we have a new crush washer that came with the gear set. Slip that guy on like so. And then the outer bearing is going to go in that position. Now when we put the yoke on and bolt this down, it's going to press the inner race and this outer bearing into the crush washer. It's going to slightly crush that in order to create the correct clearance between the inner and the outer bearing. When we do that, that's called setting the preload. So there's a predetermined amount of friction that's going to be present on these bearings, and that's designed to prevent wobble and looseness and to set the correct clearances and tolerances between all of the components. So that being said, we'll take our pinion, bring this thing back into the diff. We're going to insert this guy back into its home here. Like so. So now we'll go around to the front side with the outer bearing. Keep in mind the crush washer is still in position, but we'll go in here with the outer bearing, set that guy up, and then we can begin to set preload. And I'll show you guys how to do that momentarily. Just get all this stuff lined up here. So. Okay, so now I can go ahead and tap this seal into its position here. So we're just gonna pull that pinion back some, retract it. That way we're not hammering on it, because that would be bad. Uh-oh, I got it. Please get started. See, I'm walking around the edge of this seal, driving it in. That is the way. There we go. Okay, seal is now in position. All right, a little bit of grease out of the tub, just for good measure around the seal. It's not entirely necessary, but it's also not gonna hurt. A little bit of grease on there like so, that's good. There we go. And this time around, we're gonna use the new nut, not the old nut. See that? Nice and shiny. We got a new one. So, it's not getting started here. What are we doing? So I can hammer it on, but I can't hammer it off, huh? Is that what they're telling me? Yeah. Go. Okay, it's bottomed out against the crush washer, but see, we got a bunch of play in there, right? So now we need to put more torque on this in order to crush that washer. So I will use this bolt as a tool to assist. Watch this here. See all the threads and the holes in the front of this flange, right? We're gonna take this other bolt that has really no business being here because it's a head bolt for a Chevrolet. Not those threads. Let's try these ones. Seriously? There's rust in there. There, see, that's what I was trying to achieve. See how the bolt is over here touching this bit of structure on the housing? What that's doing is locking this hub into position. So now I can go in there with an actual long wrench and put additional torque on the nut in order to tighten up and crush that crush washer. Let's just see if the impact will do it. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Not with a dead battery, it won't. Nope. Let's try it with a freshie, see what happens. Yeah, it's going, look at that. So, now, let's see where we're at. Oh, we are so close. I feel almost no lash in it. I need maybe like a quarter of a turn and it's actually gonna be perfect. Preload is gonna be perfect. Watch this here. Let me find a reference mark here on the socket. We'll use there's a V cut into it. I'm gonna make that V go from here to here and that should be perfect on preload. There it is. There is zero backlash and very minimal resistance. Let's check this with a torque wrench to see if we have the appropriate amount of preload on those bearings and on that crush washer. Okie doke, so in order to measure the preload on these bearings, that's the friction required to turn this flange with dry bearings, with new bearings, not the old ones. There's two specs. There's a spec for old bearings and a spec for new bearings. The new bearing spec is gonna be 12 to 20 inch-pounds of torque on the flange. So we will take the socket. We need a 1/2 inch down to 3/8 adapter and then a 3/8 down to 1/4 inch adapter because we have to use an old school style beam torque wrench. So it's basically, you've got your body of your wrench, and as you apply torque with the handle, this bar right here is going to flex and bend. This bar on the gauge is going to remain straight, and so as the bottom bar bends, which the graph is attached to, it will give us a readout and a measurement on how much torque is required to make the turn. So we'll get that guy connected. Let's move you guys over here for a closer, better view. And we're gonna give this a rotation. And on that meter, we're looking for 12 to 20 inch-pounds, and that's gonna be our spec. So we're going this direction, we're hitting 10. Yeah, right there, we're at 12 on that direction, right at 12. Let's go the other direction here. 10, we're right at 12 as we turn. See that? So I do believe preload, it is on the light side, but we are right in spec. That's perfect, right where we want it, gravity. So now that pinion's installed, preload is set up, this section of the operation is good to go. So at this point, we can get this bolt out of here. We don't need this anymore. Back that guy right on out. And I could install the drive shaft now, but I don't think I want to because we still have to set up some other components inside. Additionally, like I was saying earlier, this right here, the pinion bearings, was the bare minimum. However, I had a conversation with the owner of the vehicle, and what we're going to do is I'm going to install new wheel bearings and seals on the outside since we're here. And I'm also going to go ahead and order a replacement carrier. So that's going to give us a new set of spider gears inside. And it's also going to give us new clutch packs for the limited slip. That being said, we're also, of course, going to change the side bearings on this. So I don't have the carrier. That's on the way. Probably won't be here for a couple of days because I had to order it from faraway land somewhere on eBay. I found a guy that rebuilds them. And let's see. So I'm going to hold up for the carrier, but I can still change out these rear axle bearings. So let's go ahead and grab the slide hammer. We're going to knock these guys out next and get new wheel bearings and seals installed in the outer axle tubes. Okay. So in order to get this thing out of here, we're going to have to pry out the bearing seal or the axle seal. So I've got our pry bar in position here. It's going to give us some little pushes here. Maybe it'll pop on out. There we go. So there's our seal, but now we've got the bearing, which is also pressed into the housing. So we will have to utilize a specialized tool to get this out of there. See how we're threaded on the inside right here? And we can fold it in a straight line and then unfold it to grab the back of that bearing so we can slide hammer that bearing out of the axle tube. And what I mean by slide hammer is this device here. We've got this big, giant, shiny threaded rod with a T-handle on it, and then a weighted hammer that we will pull backwards, thus sliding it down the shaft and transferring its energy into this little tool and consequently into the bearing, pulling the bearing out of the housing. Screw that guy on. Now I hold on to it with the T and the T-handle. Let me back you guys up, I'll show you. Over here. So I hold on to, hold on to the T, one hand, and then take the slide hammer and hammer that bearing out. Here she comes. Pop, one bearing removed. A little weird. Take a look at this. There's like some kind of white grease or something in there hanging out. Some silicone maybe? Yeah, it looks like RTV sealant. Like somebody put some sealant at the bottom of this to keep oil in, I guess. I don't know. Shouldn't be there. So we're gonna wipe it out. We don't need RTV sealant inside of the axle. That's silly. Or lithium grease or whatever that stuff is. I have no idea, but it's hardened and white and does not need to be there. Okay, get that wiped down. This one's good. Let's mosey on over to the other side and we will repeat procedure with the slide hammer and pull out that other bearing over here. I'll give you guys the close-up view on this side. That way you can see all the hammering in action. Let's just see for fun if I can pop this out without pulling the seal. I bet not, but we'll see. Oh. Kinda got it. I yanked one of the bearings out. Yeah, the bearing's out and the seal's out, but I brought bearings with me. That's not good. There she goes. Yeah, see, we're missing some roller bearings in there. They flew out. There's our seal, which is junk and similar silicone looking whatever business inside of that tube. That doesn't go there. Okay, so now we're waiting on the new ones to show up, and then we can hammer them in, put the seals in, and this section of the axle will be good to go. Man, so it appears that in this very, very last scene, I have lost all the audio. I had intended to drive in the new wheel bearings on the rear of this axle. However, 5 o'clock came. Ding, text message. 5 o'clock came, and I had not received my order yet, so we ultimately ended up cutting this reassembly portion a bit short. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a new differential carrier in the mail on the way. We're going to put in new bearings and new seals on the rear, and again, we'll put new fluid in there once we get this thing covered up. But it looks like this is going to have to be a part 3 due to our change mid-repair regarding the replacement of that carrier and limited slip clutches. So guys, that being said, as always, thank you guys for watching this video. I appreciate you being here all the way to the end of the part 2. Go ahead and tap that like and subscribe button down below if you enjoyed this content. And if you would like to see part 3, stay tuned. It is in the works and will be coming up shortly. So again, and as always, thank you guys for watching. And most importantly, have yourselves a fantastic day. See you guys later in a video. End of transmission.